A mini P.E.K.K.A. will win a 1v1 against skeletons, but the moment you add their tower into the mix, things get a little different. Every single Clash player knows that using your towers is one of the most important things you can do. But what if I told you that sometimes keeping a card out of your tower range is a good play? This is a mechanic that is referred to as bridge blocking. Bridge blocking is basically you preventing something from crossing the bridge. This could be a win condition, which is harder to block as it requires a badly placed building. Or it could be a mini tank, which is quite easy to block by playing any ground card. Or it could be a support troop that you want to keep separate from the rest of the push. But what exactly should you bridge block? The general rule is that by default you don't want to bridge block, as using your towers will give you a decent advantage. I would only bridge block if I had a genuine reason to do so, because when you do it in a bad time, you just get screwed. For example, a lava loon push mainly consists of two troops, one being the lava and one being the balloon, and you typically want to kill the balloon first. If you end up focusing on the lava, you will take so much damage because the balloon is the main source of DPS in this push. Playing a high building will cause the lava hound to get bridge blocked because it has more range than the balloon. This will make the tower target the balloon instead, which is a very crucial thing to taking it out quickly. Now, typically most decks won't use that technique because they benefit more from just kiting the balloon towards the middle. But with decks that have two buildings, especially Expo, you can just use an offensive Expo in the same lane to bridge block the lava hound. Then use your Tesla on the balloon that is getting targeted by the tower, which is one of the niche but very important Expo tricks. Blocking a monk is a more universal technique because any card from any deck is capable of doing so. Typically, you want to block it when you can't afford taking the chip damage from his ability on your towers. For some decks, blocking the monk is more valuable when you are using a building or a card that can be reflected by him. Even if you aren't using ranged cards, at the end of the day, having the monk behind the fat blonde man will still be better, as he would miss out on the monk's protection. On the topic of win conditions taking more damage, this kinda applies on a big portion of win conditions. A golem wouldn't count towards that because usually you don't tank for it, but rather have it tank for something. But a Hog Rider, for example, usually gets tanked for by a Mighty Miner, which allows them to get some bullshit last minute swings. The King Tower was active, by the way. Just imagine how different defending the Hog feels if you can block the Mighty Miner with some skeletons. There is an interesting play where you would block the Mighty Miner so that your Tornado can pull the Hog on King. Obviously, with the Mighty Miner there, it's not possible to nado the Hog, but I still think blocking here is a bad play. Simply, instead of blocking, just kite the Mighty Miner towards the middle to make room for your Tornado. Because when you bridge block, the tower would target the Hog Rider, which is getting killed by the Nado anyway, so it's kinda better to damage their Mighty Miner. The only time I would consider it better to block and have your tower target the Hog is if your King Tower HP is very low that you can't afford to take any damage on it. Lumberloon is kinda similar. I'd say even blocking is much more effective against it because of two things. The rage would drop behind the balloon so it gets wasted, and the balloon being an air card means it's harder to target, so having your tower help is much more crucial. P.E.K.K.A. Goblin Giant is mainly built on having the P.E.K.K.A. escort the Goblin Giant and take out the things that usually counter it. When you keep the P.E.K.K.A. behind the bridge, all you will get on your side is a squishy Goblin Giant that is so easy to take out, and then your cards will start dealing with the P.E.K.K.A. right after. Blocking tanks for win conditions can come in other forms, such as blocking a knight so that a Goblin Barrel dies to zap. It also is much more beneficial to block against Evo Goblin Barrel, as the Evo can just be ignored then. Goblin Drill usually gets fully countered by Log when the Log deals the final hit, as it would wipe the Death Goblins with it. For that reason, players tend to tank for it, whether with a knight or a demolisher, to make sure they can force you to delay your Log. Blocking their tank is often not a bad idea to make sure your tower can damage their drill and put it in Log range, especially if it was a hero knight, as letting that card get deep into your side will allow them to get crazy value with their ability. Blocking against the Skeleton Barrel is also worth doing, as with the help of the tower, a single spirit can prevent death damage. Blocking against Wall Breakers heavily depends on what cards you're gonna be using against them. For example, if you have a Dark Prince, I don't think blocking is worth it since he is a splash attacker anyway. A Valkyrie, while is a splash attacker, she will damage them while blocking, so the tower will finish them off. But something like Knight is a single target slow attacker, so having your tower help leads to an easier defense. I have a weird question. Do you hate dead people? I have another question. Does the first question sound less weird when I show you this? Bridge blocking is a graveyard player's worst nightmare. You might think poison, but honestly, they still somehow get damage through it. You might think Mother Witch, but I swear that counter push barely does anything when they have a bowler. If anything, it makes splashing your troops easier for the bowler. But when you block the bridge, they won't be able to prevent your tower from taking out the skeletons. Bar Barrel is used so much in graveyard decks because it can't get blocked. They also use building targeting troops such as Goblinstein and Giant to make sure something crosses the bridge. You can still bully them. For example, if the pocket was open, you could deploy a building there to make them walk backwards. Placing your building on the bridge can also work as a way to block a giant that is followed by an immediate graveyard. Usually, most buildings would suck when deployed there, but Goblin Cage does fine cause all of its DPS comes after it's broken anyway. And if you're playing a heavy deck without a building, Tornado can stall and move them back to make sure the tower targets their graveyard. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if they have troops behind the giant, a building on the bridge is a bad idea. Actually, any form of blocking can be an issue if they have so much stuff behind their tank, as you would be losing the 1v1. Like, you can't be blocking a Lumberloon when they have a bowler E-Drag with them. Your mini P.E.K.K.A will just evaporate. Not to say it's never a good idea to block support troops when there is a lot of them, because sometimes it might be the only way to defend. Evo E-Drag, for example, is a must-block troop against golem pushes when you are playing things like Witch, as letting them get close to it will allow them to pull her in with a tornado. Cause if she survives and the golem dies, the healer E-Drag will die to her, considering the tower would be helping. Some low damaging support troops like Evo Baby Dragon are also worth bridge blocking to make sure the speed area doesn't follow their E-Giant or Golem. Realistically, blocking support troops can be a key to defending if you know what you're doing exactly. But if you block the wrong way or make a bad decision, you will have to deal with a crazy big counter push that would just be impossible to stop. Some piercing cards are very dangerous to let near your tower. While Bowler and Xe can be brought to your side of the arena due to their lower piercing range on their projectile, things like Magic Archer or Firecracker have to be bridge blocked to prevent damage from them. Placing skeletons up like this is a very common thing for cycle decks to give them more time to react. On paper, Tesla seems like a good way to block things, cause you can't outrange it and it'll prevent splash on tower. In practice, I would say it sucks cause it actually helps them line their Magic Archer on the tower, or overall be easy to take out by simply having them protect their Firecracker. The one troop Tesla is great at bridge blocking is Princess. You will see a lot of top players have their Tesla up like that to make sure they never get caught by a surprise Princess on the bridge, especially in Triple Elixir, where Elixir doesn't really matter as much and tower damage is a much more valuable thing. There are some cards that you want to keep away from your tower, such as Golden Knight or Hero Valkyrie. It's not so much so bridge blocking because you can get them in tower range, but they gotta stay high up. Just mostly as playing it safe, because sometimes something stupid could happen and they would get the craziest chain known to mankind. You know what's actually crazy? My playtime on Clash Royale has been 5x what it used to be a few months ago, just because of that crazy balance patch we got. I don't even know if that actually improved the game or if it's just a placebo effect, something that's just making me feel better because they implemented a lot of big, good changes into the game, so it feels like, you know, we are being heard, my dudes.